Hello and welcome to Insights, the podcast with your host, Joe Pane. Join me in this deep exploration of our personal journeys from ambition to meaning, where we stop living life fast and start living life deep. This is a journey of waking up and realizing that our lives have never been about us, but about others. True success leaves positive ripple effects on other souls. I believe that success needs to be redefined from our own personal ambitious endeavors to be redefined as the value that we leave and give to others around us. Join me now as we begin this journey to deeper connections, even more fulfillment, some fun, curiosity, life, love, and all good things. Your deeper journey from ambition to meaning starts right now. Hello and welcome to episode 59. Joe here. Thank you so much once again for tuning in. Today we're going to focus on decision making. It's been said by many people that we are, an accumulation of all of the decisions that we've either made or not made. Fundamentally, the word decide means to cut off from the past. And whilst this particular episode is not dedicated to, talking about our historical narratives and stories and all this kinds of things, other episodes that I've recorded in the past, we've actually, no pun intended, has dealt with talking about our story and everything. But this is not about story. This is about how to make decisions in a very clear and easy way. In other words, so many times, I don't know about you, but I know in my life when, especially before I learned or dived into the whole space of human behavior, often decision making was at times, not all the time, but at times quite difficult. Or it would lead to more confusion, or a decision that needed to be made, I didn't know how to make it, and that would lead to being stuck on and in the wheel of procrastination. Sometimes I'd make a decision not knowing, whether I made the right decision, and I'd feel despondent or even disappointed, and sometimes I would feel phenomenal for making a decision. Now, let's talk about this, because what I want to share with you is a framework, a very, very simple model that really bubbled up in my consciousness a couple of years back, that just became, it was just something obvious and very, very simple, a simple way of making decisions that I believe and hope, will help you in any kind of decision that you need to make. So what I'm going to talk about here and what I want to share insight on is what I call macro decisions and micro decisions. So what are these two and how does it actually work? So a macro decision is like a big picture decision-based decision. And a micro decision is a more localized micro decision that is related to that big picture, to that macro. Now, right now at the moment, I'm talking gobbledygook as far as this macro and micro business is concerned. So perhaps what I can do right now is I can share with you where I used this framework that I want to introduce you to here to great effect and very powerfully and very simply only about a month ago, when Silvana and I were up in the Gold Coast here in Australia, in Queensland. So just prior to that, for a long time now, for many, many months, perhaps even just over a year, Silvana and I, we live in Melbourne, Australia, which is quite south. We've been living where we live at the moment for about 22 years. And we've been contemplating a move 2,000 kilometres north of where we live up to a state called Queensland. And a lot of you know Queensland because you're Australians, but also just to, respectfully share that with our international people. And so so we've been thinking about that. So we flew to Gold Coast about a month ago, whenever it was from the time of this recording, might have been longer, for just 2.5 days for us to explore some real estate up there. And we're interested more in what's called the Gold Coast hinterland. Anyway, I spent the week organizing the weekend. I had about six homes, 6 houses that we booked in to see exclusively, either via appointment or to time our trip around there with open inspections and all that kind of thing. So we saw all these houses and it was overwhelming. We were there from Friday afternoon to Sunday afternoon. And by Saturday afternoon, we had seen all of the houses that we had appointed, and we felt despondent. We felt confused. We felt a distant form of excitement, if I can say that, really weird. We found one home out of those 6 that we actually liked a lot. I could see us living there quite easily. It felt very homey in every way. I even went to the point of filling in the expressions of interest form to submit an offer, and that was on a Saturday afternoon. And then Silvana was quite indifferent about not the house, but about making that decision. So we just let it go. We were there. We knew we were going to be there another night. So we thought, well, let's just sleep on it. So Sunday morning, there we were at breakfast, feeling even more confused, despondent. Despondent was a good word. The energy had just disappeared from the wind from our sails disappeared, as they say. And we're just sitting there and we're going, why do we feel this way? This home is really nice and all the rest of it, and all the good reasons and all this sort of thing. Looking at it in a rather logical, but also an emotional sense as well. But why were we despondent? And then it dawned on me, like a ton of bricks. It dawned on me. I said, oh my God, we're not following the framework and the model that I've been teaching my people. In other words, we were guilty of making a micro decision before the macro decision. What does that even mean? It means that we were trying to make a decision on which house to live in before we had decided completely on which area to live in. So we hadn't even decided whether we wanted to live in the Gold Coast hinterland. I mean, this particular property ticked off all the boxes. It was an acreage property. It was large. It had plenty of space for a second home or a second sort of, granny flat or whatever you want to call it. It had plenty of space. It was modern. It was clean. It was just beautiful on so many levels. And yet we felt despondent. Why? Because we were prioritizing a micro decision, buying a house, buying a lifestyle, before the macro, the big picture, which is, hold on, but where do we want to be? So when I brought that up at breakfast, there was massive relief, because it was like, okay, well, it suddenly became clear that we're not going to be making a decision about buying this house because we don't even know if we want to be in the area. Now, that sounds really obvious. It sounds really clear now that I'm sharing this with you. And when we're in the grandstand watching the ground, it's obvious what's going on the ground. But when you're on the field playing the game, we can lose sight of the big picture. We're just aware of the local play, the micro moment of passing the ball to the next player. I'll stop using footy analogies because I know a lot of you don't like footy analogies. So, so then that was it. It was like, okay, we know that this is an area, because then when we looked at the area, we started asking questions about the area, and we knew a lot about the area. There were certain aspects of the area, and please, if you're from Gold Coast, do not take this the wrong way, but do not be offended or anything like that. There was just an aspect of what we wanted in our lifestyle that Gold Coast couldn't give us. So we pulled the pin on the Gold Coast, and then we said, okay, well, in 3 weekends' time, we're free. Let's go to Sunshine Coast, because we didn't want to go any further than that in terms of going up north. So here we are a few weeks later, and we were in Sunshine Coast. This time, the approach was very different. I didn't make any micro decisions, because when we went to Gold Coast, prior to that, I was making micro decisions on which homes we would see. I mean, we could have looked at 15 or 16 houses. Completely ludicrous to see 15 or 16 houses in the space of a day and a half. That wasn't going to happen. So I picked 6 that fitted into our schedule and left the other 9 off the list. So that was the micro decision ahead of the macro. It was quite overwhelming. When we went to Sunshine Coast, we made no appointments to see any homes. We weren't interested in seeing any homes. We were there to look at the areas. And then we had a handful of areas that we wanted to look at. And the whole trip just felt lighter. And often when we're making a macro decision or focusing on the macro decision first, you will also feel lighter. And so I want to dive a little bit deeper into this example to really bring this together for you. But just a quick side point is that if you ever find yourself, with a heavy energy around making a decision, it's more than likely, not absolutely, but more than likely, it's because you're putting micro ahead of macro. The decision that you're making, the context of which you're making that decision is not clear because you haven't looked at the macro decision level. So when we're in Sunshine Coast, the energy that we both had was light and easy, no pun intended. And we had a great friend there who had moved up there from Melbourne 13 years prior, and she knew a lot about the areas. She's got very similar values to us, very similar outlook to what we call living a great life. We have a similar definition to that. So, we just focus on area. And that way we're able to eliminate very quickly areas that we didn't want to be in. And then we made a decision while we were there on the areas that we would love to live in after spending, I think we did about, I don't know, just over 100 kilometers of just driving up and down streets and around the place. And we made this decision to live in this particular spot. So the macro decision was made. Now, we happened to see one house because it was just open for inspection as we were driving past it, and it wasn't the right home for us anyway. But it felt good to look at a house that was in an area that we had already decided. So now the micro decision follows. And what we're going to do is at the end of this particular year, we're going to move up there and we're going to rent for a little bit just so we can settle into the place. But then what we're going to do is we're going to look for a house to buy in that particular area. And when we find the right house, that decision will be made in a heartbeat. But Joe, how can you make a decision so quickly of buying a home? Yes, but once you've made the macro decision and the macro decision satisfies your values, when your values are aligned to your macro decision and you feel good about it, any decision related to that bigger picture decision can be made very, very quickly. I was training a group of coaches on behalf of a client of mine called the Coaching Institute a little while back. And I was saying so there was a couple of people on the call there that were in the training who were really overcomplicating their decision making. And I said, well, you've already made the macro decision, which is that you want to become a coach. Now, what program that you do, that's a micro decision. That decision should be made pretty quickly now that you've decided the big picture and what you want to do. So here's the thing. Here's a distinction I want to share with you. Macro decisions are made slowly and micro decisions are made quickly. So it might seem like we've made a decision pretty quickly in the Sunshine Coast to go there, but remember, this idea of moving somewhere along that coastline, whether it was Gold Coast or Sunshine Coastline, that's been floating with us for months, doing our research online, speaking to many different people. I don't know how many hours on the phone accumulated over 9 or 10 months that Savannah and I have spent, and all the rest of it. And so now the micro decisions are coming through. What's another example of a micro decision? Well, schools. We've got 12-year-old twin boys who are soon to be teenagers. So we had to make a decision on schools. Well, that's pretty easy because we know the kind of school that we want, and it's going to be in the area that we've already decided upon. So that's a micro example of a decision on a school based on the macro, which is the area that we want to live in. Then there's the house or anything else that we need to look at that's related to that area. So once the macro decision is made, all of the micro decisions are no-brainers. They should be happening automatically. They should be happening really quickly. And you won't be stuck on the wheel of procrastination. You will feel lighter. You will feel clearer. You will feel like there's momentum. It's just a beautiful thing. So this pattern, this code, this chunk of decision-making code, I guess you could call it, is applicable across all areas of life. All areas of life. Just the other day, I want to say the other day, about 2 months back, I was making a decision on whether I should, stay or leave my running group that I've been a member of for 10 or 11 years. The group's whittled away to just a handful of people, and they come and go. They're not really consistent. And I miss the community of the consistency of a great group of people, like 15, 20 people. So I was thinking, do I stay? Do I go? And that was a bit of a micro decision until I made a macro decision. And the macro decision was, I'm going to run, no pun intended here, the Gold Coast Marathon in July, which was at the time 16 weeks away from from that timeline when I made that decision. So now the micro decision of staying with the group, with a coach that I know so well, was a no-brainer. It was made very quickly. It was made in a heartbeat because I had context. I had a reason. So macro decisions provide us with a reason. Some of us might call it a vision. Some of us might call it clarity of mission. Some of us might call it, a sense of like some people might call it a big picture goal or whatever you want to call it. So I hope this is making sense. I hope this is adding value. And the next time, or even if you look at your recent past or any time in the past when you've been overwhelmed by a decision that you have to make, more than likely, you've been prioritizing a micro decision ahead of a macro decision. And that is just an inner hell. It's so difficult it's just an overcomplication, and I look back at the Gold Coast and I think I filled in that expression of interest form as an offer. And I remember thinking, do I do this? Do I don't do this? And then I started questioning and doubting myself. What am I doing? Do we really want to do this? And my ego started making up all these complicated reasons in terms of why you shouldn't, why you should. Maybe you can, maybe you won't. It was just all over the place. It was awful. And that was because there was no clarity or commitment on a macro level yet. And now that we've got this macro clarity with Sunshine Coast and in these particular spot, in this particular spot that we want to be in, now it's easy. We go there at the end of the year, we rent, and we patiently wait for the right home to come up or the right land if we decide to build, because we know that we want to be where we want to be. So I hope that example translates for you something that makes complete sense in various parts of your life. So I thought I'd just share that with you today. I hope you enjoyed today's insight on decision making. And please remember, a decision, it's cutting off from the past and committing to, the life that you want to have, or it's committing to the lifestyle you want to have, or whatever it is that matters to you. And it can be something quite local, not geographically speaking, but local in terms of a skill set you want to learn. Or it could be like you might go and join Toastmasters because you want to enter a public speaking competition. Whatever the examples are, guys, we can translate this across the board, I believe. So thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm looking forward to reconnecting with you for the next episode. I can't believe I'm dialing up episode 60 next, which is incredible. So thank you so much for listening. And there's so many of you who have been following this journey from the very beginning. And I really, really deeply appreciate that. I really do. So thank you so much. And look forward to reconnecting with you in episode 60. And please remember, if you genuinely feel this is a 5-star review kind of podcast and you would like to put a little tick of approval there with 5 stars on the Apple Podcast, please go ahead and do so. It'd be muchly appreciated. All right. Enjoy. Thank you so much. Talk soon. Bye for now. I'm Joe Pane, and you've been listening to Insights, the podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can now follow my insights on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm looking forward to being with you again very soon in the next episode of Insights, the podcast.